You know none of this is real, right? Whether we like it or not, all we are now is a bunch of cartoon characters. As time goes on, we just end up falling into our archetypes. I add a key dynamic, because I'm the funny one.
I know you're probably sick of hearing that line, one of the most talked about parts of one of the most talked about shows, with a character everyone has made a post on, theory about, or video of. It's not the topic I thought I'd be on, especially with such a popular series, but it's the topic I have to be on because it's a flawed show with a flawed character, the kind of person you hate but also deeply understand, looking at them and seeing who you could have been. There are so many qualities in Jax that feel like the exaggeration of what so many of us used to think and why, a cobbled together mindset which requires constant effort only to avoid gain, all because one is terrified of what that gain means, the responsibility of having someone or something real. I see who I escaped and, in my most stressful moments, who I still can't help but be. So it's the topic I have to be on. It's Jax and the desire to be hated. First, if you're like me and somehow missed almost everything about this show until recently, what is the Amazing Digital Circus? Well, a group of people get trapped in what seems to be a VR game, putting on a headset and finding themselves unable to take it off. An AI named Kane provides mentally stimulating adventures, sometimes a haunted mansion, sometimes a candy kingdom, sometimes guns, which they often don't enjoy but go on anyway as a distraction, because if they simply focus on escaping, something that feels more and more impossible every day, they might abstract, turning into these demented forms and being banished to the basement forever by Kane. That's the constant tension. Death isn't possible here, no injuries last, and time doesn't even seem to move. But because of that, abstraction is almost an even worse fate, driven into permanent insanity. Against this, most of them band together. Our characters aren't from a consistent time or place. Kinger, with wisdom and sparing moments of darkness, was a programmer from the project and has been here since the start, while others like Pomni are dropped in at the opening of the show. Everyone else comes in between, complete with bodies to almost insult their deepest fears. Gangle has exchangeable masks to mirror her mood swings and how she hides herself. Zooble has a body with interchangeable parts since it never felt right for them. Ragatha was like a doll to her abusive mother, torn up in another's play, and Jax's design, what it reflects, isn't as apparent as the others. Where their designs reinforce obvious traits with physical presence, where Kinger's at least expresses a relationship, given his wife was here too, and Pomni's is the main character, so she has to match the theme. Jax's design just doesn't seem to express anything about him. But that's the first hint of something brewing under the surface. What's on the surface is, well, chaotic assholery. He says he's been looking for a bowling ball that's in Kaufmo's room, but then immediately loses it, forcing Kinger and Gangle into a dangerous pit. He throws Pomni between two trucks to use as a bridge while aiding a kingdom he later destroys, tosses Ragatha into a deep fryer at Spudsy's because, well, literally just because. It seems like the only thing that's important to him is screwing with what's important to other people. He doesn't conflict with them over consistent personal ideals like they do with him, where Zooble hating him is because he picks on the weak, or Ragatha because he tries to sow conflict. Rather, he pokes fun over anything and everything with no loyalty. Jax cares about nothing. At least that's what he says. But saying that still expresses something, doesn't it? Just take this moment alone in episode 1. He says,
I'm fine with doing whatever, as long as I get to see funny things happen to people.
And then gets immediately flustered when something funny happens to him. He cares about something, clearly. There's no such thing as unmotivated behavior. No one is truly just following chaos, so if the only through line is that others hate his actions, then this is what he cares about. Jax is trying to be hated. And yet, as the show progresses, we also see this start to crack, suggesting it's all just an act. Of course, the moment we just referenced expresses an annoyance contrary to his words, but there's much more. In episode 4, The Adventure at Fast Food Parody Spudsies, Jax is unhappy to say the least. If he causes chaos, he gets sent to training, which is basically torture, so he can't do his usual thing, leaving him only with grueling work as Gangle, placed in charge, and makes up for all the times where, well, he's basically done this to her. Without a moment to rest. After all, if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean. He's exhausted, and in that exhaustion, he attempts to vent to Pomni, asking how she's doing to receive the same in return. Left without free energy, we see a very different Jax who's actually trying to get close to another person, suggesting that what we normally see is an active decision, not a passive and true self. This happens once more in the next episode, where he focuses on Gangle's happiness, seeing as she's coming more alive after her growing friendship with Zooble, which shows an interest in understanding others, and of course the legendary crash out in episode 6, where he opens up to Pomni unconsciously, getting all wrapped up in the fun of the moment and not realizing it, before pushing her away viciously once he does. These events make it clear that being an asshole isn't Jax's true desire, but rather the means to some other end he finds more important than what it costs. So why does Jax want this against his own interest? What is the contradiction of this character? How does someone come to fear a basic human need? Well, this is where we have to really get into the spoilers, so be warned. Real world Jax had an unfortunately relatable life. We only get a few looks at it, but it takes place in somewhere you probably know. Nowhere. Not literal nowhere, but those kinds of suburbs and winding roads that are both sprawling and empty all at once, filling space but with nothing of substance, flat like paper. It's a contradiction that traps every kid into their home life through highways, distance, and conservatism, and for Jax, home was troubled. He describes his father as distant, never proud, and once he and his wife divorced, non-existent. And that makes the mother he was once close with all the more aggressive and messy, leading to a life full of confusing fights.
When I showed weakness, I was less of a man than him. When I lashed out, I was just as bad as him.
One day these fights come to a boil, and having admitted that the label his mother fights over may not apply to him, or rather her, at all, she still doesn't let up. Instead, she uses that as a fact to belittle, berate, attack, and then, even more confusingly, hug. Jax pushes her away with all of her force, and she falls back without getting up. Panicked that she may have killed her mother, she runs away, becoming homeless for somewhere of about 3 months, presumably in that time putting on the headset and entering the circus while looking for shelter. This is where we start to see the origin of Jax's behavior. Why would one want to be hated? Because being close to anyone is a complicated mess. We learn more from our parents than we think, and we can assume Jax's parents had many fights between them, as she goes on to have with her mother, creating a pattern the brain can't ignore. To be close to someone is to be always around the corner from conflict. And this is only heightened by what appears to be a lonely life, a paper town with only one parent to take them anywhere, leaving home as the only example. Around conflict like that all the time, you just start to take it as inherent that every close bond will have it. Of course, that makes it less desirable. But the mess of connection isn't just in the fights, the good times versus the bad, it's in what's behind the fights too. As she continues about her mother's expectations,
It was like she missed him, but also hated him.
her mother is projecting the father onto her in an inescapable way, where everything just becomes evidence of him, where the same qualities are good this time and bad another time, where she seems to love him but also hate him. There's no consistency, so what is Jax supposed to expect? What is she supposed to be? She's being seen through a lens made for someone else, a lens developed across 14 years at least, where inconsistency is inherent. The same qualities can be good and bad if you're pulling from across so much time. Sharing so much of life with someone will always lead to this, a complexity which becomes incomprehensible even to oneself from sheer scale. The more time, the more inconsistency. The more complicated a situation, the more indecipherable the expectations. There's no good answer to anything between humans, only making connection all the more confusing. And then we have her mother's reaction to her admission, doubling down on that confusion and risk. How are you ever certain what someone feels about you when connection is so complicated? She has so many negative things to say about what Jax is, but then after all of it, still fondness in her heart for who Jax is, her child. How can you love the whole but hate the parts? It's like some big, defining, consuming part of you that might be all of you, or at least infects all of you, is something they hate, but not you. Maybe it's just because they don't quite get it, or holding out hope for it to change. Maybe they just don't know how big of a part of you it is. There's no way to know their true motivations, the thoughts behind each word, and we're left to ponder. In this case, about the person who controls our entire life. What will change next? How will they feel tomorrow? The whiplash of what she does makes the anxiety so much worse. It would have been best if she accepted it, but it would have been better still even if she just hated her outright, because at least then she would know. But instead, it's neither. It's constant anxiety, the inability to settle or control one's direction. Love has become polluted to Jax due to these changes, the rapid pace at which force is seen as good or bad, the speed at which vile language turns into a warm hug. It all makes it uninterpretable, chaotic, anxious. It makes deep connection impossible to desire. And, well, there's also just that sort of poetic sadness to it all, right? Every moment Jax had witnessed they were together, then suddenly they weren't. A man who'd always been there, at least physically, is now essentially non-existent, disappeared. I mean, can anyone do that? Does love just suddenly end, or was it maybe even never there to begin with? Once again, it's also confusing. It's a constant anxiety to connection, living with all that in mind. And she sees a woman tortured by this fact, investing so much of her life into someone that even once they hate each other, she can't help but miss him or move on. A connection can end just like that, and the effects of it last so much longer, so much sadder. And isn't that guaranteed to happen one day, even if just in death? Even just imagining that sadness can drive one away from connection because it's so powerful it can destroy you. So powerful it makes some other all the more horrible and bitter from it, tanking what remained even further. Opening oneself up to connection is also opening oneself up to all of this, to a lack of control as suddenly a car crash, a cheat, a move. Anything can rip away all you're accustomed to. One loses the ability to control their own life once others are let far enough into it. So, from everything she's witnessed, connection to Jax is one massive risk of having your life ruined. These are some of the thoughts swirling around the teenager's head as she puts on a headset in an abandoned building and suddenly finds herself here, surrounded by a bunch of cartoon characters in a flashy circus and unable to escape. They try to comfort her, and as time goes on, to grow close to her as well. But there's always a resistance. After all, connection is anxiety. So Jax resists and resists, enough that Kaufmo and Ribbit, her two best friends from the circus, have this reaction to making her laugh.
Oh, he laughed! Ah, yes, we did it!
Shut up!
Clearly they were trying for a while, meaning Jax took everything with her mother to heart, truly avoiding closeness to others. But in this new place, separated from everything she once knew and with only their comfort as something real, she eventually gave in, because how could she not? The world is cold and harsh, and we survive only through the kindness of each other. No matter how many walls we put up, others will tear them down because, as we see from Jax's behavior while exhausted, the walls are a constant effort, and no one can maintain constant effort. There's not much real logic to it, there's just truth. We want to be with others. So even Jax makes friends. They share traditions, they pair for adventures, they laugh together, and life in the circus becomes fun. She was friendly with Ragatha even, who she hates in the modern day. Overall, an extreme contrast to the circus we see for the most of this show. Who couldn't fall into this? So there Jax is, sitting in Ribbit's room after one of these great adventures, close as hell, when Ribbit starts to tell her a secret about her human life. And Jax asks if this was trying to get her to open up, and she responds that it's just me saying that I trust you, and she continues to stay closed off enough to deny it, and it leads to Ribbit then asking, do you trust me too? And in respect for their joy and under that pressure, Jax begins to crack, sharing much more than ever before, everything that we just covered. She starts going carefully, slowly and consciously, and then it just keeps going, keeps sharing. It flows out naturally and probably felt good, the camera rotating out as if for the first time she isn't in her own head about it. She just is. And then she remembers, and it pulls back in, and she hates it. Because now there's risk again. Ribbit isn't in the wrong. Jax did need to open up. But the problem is that the weight Ribbit finds important about a connection is what makes Jax feel danger around the corner. She didn't ask to know something about her that no one else did. She didn't say, let's become better friends. Someone just did that to her in a way that can't be denied without tanking the relationship. So now she has that. Now she's special. Now she has to bear some of that weight. The only way to respect Ribbit's trust is to show trust in return. And that's taking what was once just good times and bringing into it the agreement to last through the bad times as well. To complicate the fun with important things which lead to arguments and calculations about what's best for someone and honesty even when it's tough and all of that. Suddenly it's so much more complicated. After all Jax's trauma, each laugh post-secret isn't just a laugh, it's a sort of requirement. What if she uses this secret against her just like her mom? And maybe their fun is the only thing preventing this, so now the fun has a pressure to it. She could tell everyone about that secret and everything about her role in the circus could change. Suddenly, it's like one is out of control of their own life, subject to what someone else desires to tell. That's trust after all. It's a leap of faith where you give someone the ability to destroy your life and hope that they don't, and you only know they won't when they give you the same ability back. But maybe it's not just even that, but it's kind of like divorce again. Someone new shows up or something changes and suddenly they're not friends anymore and now everything is dulled. Now they're avoiding each other. Now sides are picked and everything feels like shit. She could have just been, but now there's this possibility that the nice baseline will be ruined, living forever with the feeling of what was compared to what is. You can only understand loneliness if you were once together, so if being alone terrifies her, she should just never be together. It's also important to note that she didn't tell Ribbit her secret. Ribbit simply intuited it from everything she said and placed the bow on her to express this. And yes, that is sweet and genuine. It means Ribbit was actually listening and knew her, and that can feel great. That is great. But isn't it also terrifying to know someone can read you more than what you said? Like, now she isn't actually in control of who knows what about her. There's someone else who can tell what she's thinking instead. For someone who was berated for being known, this always comes with a bit of terror. Even if this moment is sweet, who will that person who knows be tomorrow? So when Kaufmo knocks on the door and shocks her back to reality, she does the one thing you can do to have control. What she did with her mom. Push them away so that they can't push you, so that everything is simple in being just your will. Jax tells Ribbit that if she tells anyone, she'll never talk to her again, and then refuses to engage with her at all where possible and never genuinely where not. She says it was all a lie, a big joke to con her, and everything slowly degrades until they have a real, true fight where she calls her manipulative, prying, and they split for good. And this is kind of a slight tangent, but I think just like Jax's mother was following a messed up logic for her fights with Jax is doing the same thing here. She's not making up excuses when she calls Ribbit manipulative. She's seeing every example that was ever laid out at home and drawing the natural conclusion. You only want information for advantage. To be close to someone is to be manipulative to her. But back on track, Ribbit isn't seen for some time after this, and when she's found once more, she has abstracted. The circus, once bright and happy, slowly becomes sad. Jax refused to see her, but did keep interacting with everyone else because they hadn't truly had vulnerable moments yet. They laughed and smiled, but no one ever shared a secret. No one ever said, "You mean something more to me," to put that pressure on, and so they were fine. But then Kaufmo starts to say Jax can talk to him about the abstraction, and that feels special, so she pushes him away. And Ragatha does the same, so she gets the same as well. We see over and over that the second anyone starts to show real depth for Jax after Ribbit abstracts, Jax just runs away. Especially because after what happens to Ribbit, a new pattern is forming. And not only is getting close to people anxiously complicated, but it's also dangerous. She kills everyone she has the chance to push away. Not only is it a risk to you, but because it's a risk to you, it's a risk to them. If you don't want the risk, because they can make you important without your control, and then there's the wait, and if you don't want it, they'll be hurt, and maybe worse, so you can never be truly close to anyone ever again. If you don't want to be hurt or inflict hurt, you can't do the song and dance of getting closer and then running. You just have to outright never be close to anyone ever. But we just saw that this isn't possible. Jax tried that at the start. She took a while trying to not even laugh for anyone in the circus, and look what happened. She ended up doing the same thing again. She ended up getting close because how can you not when others decide for you from even just fun? She laughed with Ribbit because it felt good. She shared with Ribbit because it felt good. You can't escape that other people are intoxicating. Even if you isolate, people will project something onto that, read something from it, and eventually pull you in, especially in a place like this that limits them and forces them together. When less than 10 people are the whole world, you will try to be close to all of them. This is why she goes further, becoming the asshole that she is once Ribbit is gone. Because if you can't keep yourself away from people, then you have to make other people keep away from you. Just look at how she treats Gangle the moment she shows up, giving her the name because...
Call her Gangle. That sounds about as pathetic as she looks.
This is the first interaction they ever have, and it's shockingly hostile because that's the first impression she needs, for them to think asshole, for them to carry around something they hate because of Jax. It makes her the kind of person who, as Zooble says about her when Pomni shows up, you shouldn't even consider because she's just fucking with you. If all you're doing is causing chaos, making other people mad, then if they try to look deeper, all they'll find is annoyance, with no reason to try and get close, and suddenly they're doing the work of isolation for you. Throwing Ragatha in the fryer makes little sense. It can only be hate. Telling Gangle to shut up because she can't hear the escalator makes little sense. It can only be hate. By building herself on nothing more than being the thing against them, annoying them, having no rhyme or reason otherwise, she's free from them finding and reading into any pattern or depth. She's free from them trying to make her laugh like Ribbit and Kaufmo did, free from the start of connection. The problem is we know that Jax is much softer than she lets on, much more prone to connection than this act allows. I don't think she's the kind of person who can actually treat people like shit just because. Rather, she needs some justification for it, some reason to make it so she's not really doing anything bad to the people she's so inclined to seek out, and of course, some reason to still be around them, because no one wants to be truly isolated or unimportant. She needs something to mend those gaps, to not be hateful in her own mind. And this is what the circus provides. A detachment from humanity, a focus on entertainment, on story, action, roles.
You know none of this is real, right? Whether we like it or not, all we are now is a bunch of cartoon characters. As time goes on, we just end up falling into our archetypes. I add a key dynamic, 'cause I'm the funny one.
This isn't a mindset which is exclusive to the circus, but rather which is more allowed by it because of its exaggerations. It takes a feeling we all know and makes it center stage. Futility. We wake up every day and face down an uncaring reality which sometimes changes in appearance but never changes in substance. A new job but the same problems, new town but the same feelings. A boss who doesn't care and never listens, even as they direct the day-to-day of most of your waking hours, and nothing we do matters since it all ends the same, often just avoiding the breakdown of admitting that fact outright, dreaming of escape. The circus adds more color, makes the adventures grand and daily, but each time they return to the same spot, as if only to reset to play their roles again the next day with bodies tailor-made to them. The only thing that matters in all of this futility is the role, because it's all about stimulation and show, distraction from the undeniable fact that they all know but refuse to accept. All that matters in this moment of distraction and unreality. All we can do is make it entertaining. This is where we find the root of Jax's design. The cartoon rabbit, the elusive trickster, always chased but never caught, repeating the cat and mouse game each week with the same people and same relationships, new scenery but never new substance. A cartoon made not to ponder, but to stimulate. The cartoon rabbit is an asshole. They exist to mess up the plans of those around them for entertainment. They're only lovable because of the framing, because goofy music and sound effects dull the shock of an anvil to the head, because of the time slot and the social context. This is the world to Jax, a cartoon where what you see of the circus and not what you think of the circus is true, and it's because of that that she's justified, the funny one, in a land where we all just become archetypes. What she's doing isn't being the asshole to herself, but rather adding a key dynamic to the show of their lives and providing the conflict which keeps things truly entertaining. She's the trickster, the spice, the excitement who makes Kane's predictable adventures into true Saturday morning chaos. And yes, it hurts people, but doesn't really hurt people. No one can die, so hurt is a strong term for it, and if they're all just archetypes, are they really even people to be hurt? There's no actual damage done on two fronts. And of course, this also absolves her of her past with Ribbit too. If nothing is real, if they aren't people, then she hasn't driven someone to death. This mindset of show is protecting her from the past and for the present. And in the same breath, it insulates from the future. It says nothing should change. The most that should be done is the specific episodic reset for more hijinks. The roles are set, and once one finds theirs, all they need do is play it to the extremes. Jax's mindset stitches together a fragmented and complicated mess into a simple package, backfilling exactly what's needed to maintain her sanity, to make everyone not want to see her since she knows she can't keep herself from wanting to see them. After all, she doesn't sit out the adventures like Zooble, does she? Because they do it, we know it's possible, but Jax doesn't because isolation isn't her true desire. Her lack of care isn't real. She wants to be there, wants to be around them, wants to be important like anyone else. It's just that the fear of closeness makes it that this is the only way to be important, to be hated. To take up as much space in their mind as possible without a hint of depth, that's only possible through constant and unyielding annoyance. After all, those motivations are the ones others can see the least in. Whenever she's taken for training at Spudsy's, which is essentially a bit of torture, her first concern isn't for any pain, but...
Nobody can see this, right?
Because weakness is something anyone can relate to. We've all had a bad day, a bad boss, we've all been scared or anxious. Seeing those things humanizes and normalizes someone. It gives us a read for what's important to them through their fear and exhaustion. So to be unknown, weakness is one of the last things one can show. All they can do is be the cartoon rabbit. The problem is that this logic isn't foolproof. As we see, the circus is real, at least in the sense that we can always make something real of what we experience. Even if they're nothing but brain scans and there's no way to escape because of that, within their bounds, within what they can observe, this has to be real. Because they felt it, there's no more reason than that. I mean, even right now, with all of our bodies and sensations, we live in a solipsistic nightmare. We can never know that all of our memories aren't fake or that we only exist for the moment some god witnesses us, because any proof against it could just be part of the illusion. The only proof we have is the fact we think and feel, that because we can doubt, we know there is something to be tricked and that we are that something. Everyone knew the twist all along, but they kept going because they made it real in their relationships. They created change in the mundanity. Zooble reaches out to Gangle after Gangle gave them the first adventure they didn't hate at Spudsy's, turning what Gangle saw as a failure into something to grow from. They become genuine friends supporting each other, which then draws Gangle away from Jax, because someone else is there to stand up for her, which then lets her get even better, and eventually she's the one supporting Zooble at times, unfazed by the harshest reveals, because her comfort comes from how real that relationship is, that even if they never escape, this is something that can't be denied. Gangle shows that nothing in the circus is truly static, but that the only way to evolve in a world which won't change is each other. That's the point of a cartoonist presentation for a deeply character-driven show. It subverts that own presentation. Things don't reset to the same relationships each time for a new adventure. They evolve at each turn and never stop. It's there to show that even in a place designed for the exact opposite of realness and growth, that even in a cartoon, those things can't help but bloom from us. That's the reason Jax can't keep away from people after all, isn't it? What we feel is what is real. This is why her mindset wasn't one born from observation, but from force. Jax was the one keeping things feeling unreal through her constant bullying. By presenting a stream of temporary problems to steal all the attention, it was much harder for anything persistent to form and be realized. That chaos is to keep focus split and divide efforts. She says they fell into their archetypes, but isn't she the one putting them there? Isn't Gangle sad because Jax bullies her all day and night? Isn't Zooble pissed off because Jax always gives them an annoyance? Isn't Ragatha torn up every adventure because Jax shoots her in the fucking face? We even see her trying to turn Pomni into the evil one so that she can box her in as well. It's not that they're archetypes and nothing can change, it's that Jax spends constant effort to keep things that way, commanding their mindsets and then taking her own product as the evidence. Spudsies is such an awful adventure for her because, so far out of control due to Gangle's manic episode, she's left to just herself, her own thoughts, while watching them take their own paths, watching them find something real. It's one of the few times she has to truly consider what's happening, and for her, that's true stress. Leaving and announcing,
"This wasn't fun at all, see you all later,"
is trying to correct that, to look at a moment of change for Gangle and say, never do that again, to secure the archetype, all while acting as if none of it got to her so there's no weakness to relate to. That line, one we see her clearly acting for based on her exacerbation afterwards, is specifically designed to try and keep everything as it was. But as we mentioned at the start, that's an important episode overall for Jax because we see cracks forming due to that exhaustion. We see that with someone new in the right conditions, she's seeking out genuine comfort. What she's done has worked, as Pomni responds suspiciously, but it takes someone who is still about to respond with kindness, that is, someone who still is not yet set in their opinion, and gives them a reason to see more, a hint of the real Jax which only grows. From that one seed, it's clear there's something more, and so Pomni never stops looking. In the next episode, where Gangle refuses to partner with Jax, she sees Gangle having fun with Zooble and questions to Pomni,
"Think Gangle is actually capable of being happy?"
because the sad archetype isn't supposed to be happy, right? Things were the same for so long that it started to get comfortable, but now people are breaking the role and becoming friends, and I think that's a bit of jealousy. Jax was creating a world where happiness wasn't supposed to be possible, working real hard for it in fact, and here it is happening anyway. This is probably why her barriers start to come down more and more following these things, because seeing it happen for someone else makes her want it to happen for her. Deep down underneath all of that anxiety, she still wants connection. Maybe it's possible even for her. So she starts to perform a bunch of guarded interactions with Pomni, expressing real feelings but always under a guise of irony or ulterior motive, so that if things do start to feel too overwhelming, she can pull the usual trick. It was all just a joke. That's why she apologizes to Pomni for the president adventure, but in a sarcastic tone. Why she expresses fondness for her, but targeted at Ragatha, who's anxious about not being liked. Each one is a moment of testing the waters, seeing if she can get closer without being close. We watch this debate internally, with many more close-up, contemplative new expressions from Jax than ever before in these episodes, never quite followed through on, but always there. These are the conditions leading into episode 6, the beginning of the end. This whole episode is Jax acting against her own rules without realizing it. Given guns and told to shoot each other, Jax and Pomni end up on a team and with a mismatch. One wants to kill everyone and the other just wants to see her friends be happy. To cure this, Jax starts to share her view of the world. And while for her it's just explaining some of these rules to Pomni, just trying to make this adventure fun, the point of those rules is for advantage, for betterment, right? As she says,
"I know you hate it here, but the silver lining is you can pretty much do whatever you want. Just let loose."
connected with the opening argument that this is possible because none of this is real, it's saying pretty directly that thinking nothing is real is the way to feel better in the circus. So by telling someone this, she's trying to make them feel better. So that means she cares about them. This is an expression of friendship to Pomni. And yes, she does want her to be the archetype of the evil one, but think about what that really means. Wasn't Jax friends with the evil Pomni in the softball adventure? Didn't she feel comfortable around her because evil Pomni had no desire to see things as real or meaningful? So even though she's pushing for less depth, she is also pushing for Pomni to be someone she could be friends with, the kind of person who could be fun without being important. She wants it to be like how she fires the gun, not thinking about how it'll impact others and as such struggling with the weight like Pomni, but with reckless abandon instead, unencumbered by such things to an advantage. Don't think, just fire. And yes, that's manipulative, but it's also so plainly saying, I want a friend, I'm just afraid. And this seems to pan out, what with Pomni committing to annoying Zooble and shooting everyone in the fucking face, so Jax's guard only drops all the more because it feels like Pomni is going to be in it for the fun. Jax willingly gives away personal information here because of that, sharing her irrational fear, by the way the most relatable irrational fear ever, fuck corn on the cob, because she's all caught up in how great this feels and will it even matter? It's just fun, it's just a game with someone who finally sees it the same. But she underestimates the ability of someone in the circus to find something genuine, even in an act, as Pomni ends the ruthless adventure with a hug instead. And right there, it begins. The confusion, the anxiety, the push. It all comes rushing back, and not just a physical reminder of the past two events, but also everything that was so stressful about them, the weight to each action, the ability to hurt someone, all of it. The leap of faith has been made and she's overwhelmed. What follows is what we already know. But I think there is something interesting in there, how she doesn't just shoot Pomni to be done with it, but instead insists Pomni continue with shooting her. In part, it's probably to make her commit to being the evil one, to be an asshole, but even asking her to do so once that act is clearly over is like asking for a confirmation. Asking, do I mean so little to you that you can shoot me? Because that's what's important. She can ditch her own feelings in an instant, but can Pomni ditch hers? Can Jax be free of what Pomni feels? That's why Jax needs to be shot instead, to prove that they mean nothing to each other. But Pomni doesn't, because Jax can never mean that little to her again, and that's why what follows is a ping-pong of stances, saying she doesn't matter and she'd forget her if she abstracted, because she just wants it to be over. But then seeing how much that hurts and having the fear of hurting someone come back and saying, no, that was actually the joke, of course she doesn't think that. But then Pomni keeps pushing so it flips again, so she hurts her even more, and it just keeps going until finally it ends at the only place it can, an outright admission of the point.
There's nothing more to me, so please, just stop looking.
She has to outright admit this because there's no answer once the leap of faith is made. You either hurt or be hurt, and so she's pleading for it to be anything else. From there, it's all downhill. 1 is an occurrence, 2 a coincidence, 3 a true pattern. His mother, then Ribbit, now Pomni, there's no way, despite even constant effort to be an asshole, that she can be free of these all-encompassing moments where it feels like the world is ending. She's always pulled back in, always to this effect, like life is just a cycle of avoiding pain and then feeling it anyway, worsening herself each time. Hasn't she become like her mother, from the end of connections only becoming more and more jaded and awful? In trying to avoid all of this, she's only come to embody it. So what really is the point then? She just ends up isolating in her room and for the first time in ages, looking at the pictures of her, Kaufmo, and Ribbit, and it all starts to come back. Are we really here again? Jax begins to abstract because abstraction is that point of hopelessness, the insanity of chasing a truly unattainable goal. Only, unlike everyone else, that goal isn't escape, it's isolation. She either gets it and goes mad from it, how awful it is for humans, or fails to get it and goes mad from the failure. Just as with Pomni, she either opens herself up to the risk or it hurts her. There is no good option. The rest of her character is defined by the state, a constant back and forth between extremes with no solution, slowly falling deeper and deeper into insanity from it. The last straw is when the justification of the cartoon can't stand anymore. Following Kane's trick escape adventure, where Jax inconsequentially chooses to stay, Kinger has his memory jogged enough, both from recent events and darkness, to reveal an important point. He was a programmer on this project, working to create the circus, Kane, and knowing that Scratch, another programmer, was creating the technology for brain scans. The realization is obvious. But Jax forces herself out of the situation and once away has a breakdown saying,
Oh my god. This is real.
There was always a level of detachment before, some idea that this was all, in effect, a bad dream. Everything before could just be imagination. Everyone else just simulation, and escaping could bring anything. A bit of hope and denial was key to propping up a flawed mindset. But with Kinger's confirmation, and later direct confirmation in the finale, what's left? This is real. This is all they can know forever, and so everything before it is just as real too. There is no escape from that past, whether it happened or not. There is no escape from this present, whether they're people or NPCs. And so Ribbit and Kaufmo, they were just like her, experiencing the most reality they could. And she killed them. Everything Jax has done is as real as it can be and as horrible as it can be. While everyone else was building, she was tearing down. Even after Kane goes mad and tortures them, even after he's deleted, all it's doing is confirming this, that they can never go back and this is all they have. For everyone else, this is survival because they've accepted it, and through their connections they can make a reality they enjoy, build something real in their experiences together. Togetherness makes them greater than whatever reality may truly be. But Jax is terrified of connection. Jax doesn't have that. She's built everything on expressly not having it. In a world only further exaggerating her loneliness, what can she do but abstract? Not in some flashy scene, not to grand drama, but just off-screen, alone in the background after one last back and forth, approaching Pomni only to fail to speak to her. It's not flashy, but that is the perfect encapsulation. The desire to branch out, but the inability to see it through. A mind tortured by finding stress on both sides of the question. That you go, I need to talk to someone, and you get there, but then the second you've tried to talk to someone, you think about how stressful it is to do that. So you think you need to be alone, and it keeps repeating forever until insanity. That's what it's made out of, all questions and no answers. It's how one loses their shape and instead becomes so abstract. If nothing is certain, if there's no good decision, how can one even know their form, decide on it? But what follows shows the biggest flaw of what Jax tried to do, working from something we covered at the start. Even by trying to be hated, you express that something can be loved. When Jax abstracts, Pomni takes a big risk in trying to save her, somehow entering her mind during the abstraction, fighting through some inner demons to the real one, witnessing her past, and saying goodbye. I don't know if it's deserved, or whatever you might say after all she did to the rest of the circus, but remember that Jax is 1/7 of the interaction they could ever have, and also I don't really care if it's deserved or not. I don't think it's about forgiving an abuser or redemption through ending one's own life. I think it's about how impossible it is to avoid love and the dangers of doing so. The fact that Pomni, and eventually the rest of the circus, are willing to go to such lengths to preserve even an abstracted Jax here is showcasing that even if you try to get people to hate you, there's still a deeply human reason for it, still something to relate to at the core, that because they did this so readily, it could have happened at any point. All Jax needed to do was just not walk away, but talk to them, say anything and accept the help which was waiting before it was too late. Jax isn't forgiven because she deserves to be or something. Jax is forgiven because that's the situation and that's what they want to do. If we can understand someone, we can make it our choice as to how real we allow them and their situation to be, and the circus decides to make it real, to see Jax not as the result of her fear, but the person behind it, no matter what's happened in the past. That is always their choice. It's about how, yes, connection is messy and chaotic since we all make this choice with regards to everyone else, but that for all the problems that causes and the fear of them, there is something so deeply special about it. Jack says to Pomni,
I'm a terrible person. So why does anybody still care about me? You're not supposed to care. You're not supposed to miss me. You're not supposed to love me.
She says it because everything she did was in service of that fact, of having no depth, and yet Pomni decided to see depth there anyway from the slightest hints. It's saying that you can't push people away no matter how hard you try. You will always be something to them, and there is no way to avoid that risk. So you just have to get something for it. You can't be like Jax and destroy. Keep paying a cost just to end up with nothing because it will hurt anyway. And if it's going to hurt, it may as well hurt for something. If it's going to hurt, at least make it hurt in the way that confirms importance instead of despairing at the lack of it. That's the only solution. Commit. Go against the logic and fear and say, I'm going to love you anyway. Fight the chaos with the chaos. A big part of the Amazing Digital Circus in Jax is to present the case of how far someone can go to avoid connection and how it finds them anyway. To say that such a thing is impossible and that no one is beyond love, even if they become some incomprehensible form like this, because we can still choose to make such a thing real and love it and make it important. It doesn't have to make sense. We just have to choose it. And so, all we can do is choose. The entire time I was watching The Amazing Digital Circus, I had a bit of a soft spot for Jax. I didn't think she was a great person or anything, it's just that the show felt most interesting when she and her flaws were impacting its direction. Like, that was what was drawing me in much more than anything inside the mystery box. I knew intellectually I should hate her. She was awful, but instinctually, almost shamefully, I wanted to like her, not even just as a character, but as a person. Now, I guess it's like you see a tall, lanky character with trypophobia who gets shoved in a maid outfit, and your tall, lanky, trypophobic maid outfit wearing brain goes, she just like me for real, except for, all the being terrible to people, so you just keep it inside and say Ragatha is your favorite instead. But you start to write about Jax and you spend like 2 weeks doing it, failing massively and falling behind schedule and cursing her in the show because you can't figure out how this stupid nothing is real mindset goes together in any cohesive way, and you're just about to say fuck it and lose 2 weeks until finally the last episode comes out and you hear her talk about divorced parents and fights at home and the confusion it causes, the way it makes you so terrified of love, the way it makes you both hurt and hate hurting people, and it clicks. You start to think about how relatable those moments feel, and suddenly, she just like me for real turns into thinking about things you hadn't in years, realizing that you forgot so much of it and in turn some of what it taught you as well. You forgot who you could have been, and now, finally seeing the example of it, realizing just how close that could have been was to are. I always write what feels true to the character, but no one can deny how their own experience codes what they will feel true, and that's why I spent so long on Jax's past. My parents divorced a bit earlier than hers, and I think I was 10 or so when they did. And it's a weird thing to say because, yeah, it fucks you up, but it was probably for the best, at least for their survival. I don't even know how my parents kept from biting each other's heads off long enough to think of having 2 kids, let alone actually doing it. I don't have a single memory of them actually feeling happy together. I've seen pictures of their wedding, but they just feel foreign to me, almost unnerving. Every car ride was a fight, sometimes at the point of one of them getting out on the side of the highway to stop it. The door to the unfinished part of our basement had this big hole in it from where one of them threw a chair at the other when they locked themselves in. And this is one of those, oh, that wasn't normal moments. My mom used to play this joke where she would say she was leaving forever, and me and my brother would watch her get in the car from the window and cry, only for her to come back an hour or so later and say, she got us, what a good joke. Of course, we thought it was a terrible joke. Of course, it wasn't a joke. It was her and my dad fighting so viciously that even her kids weren't reason to stay in that house a second longer. There are some happy pictures of us, apparently. She loves to break them out and say everything was better at one point. But I think the only really happy memory I have from that time with my parents was lying on my dad's chest one day when I was real young and he fell asleep, and it was amazing to me how much his body moved with a real full breath. Like he was so large and powerful, and I just felt peaceful and safe. But then other times he would be throwing your bike into a ditch because you couldn't ride properly, and that peace became fear, the feeling that even a Saturday with his kids was a chore he was just getting through. And when he left, the one thing he did protect us from, our mother's wrath, that was just left to us now. There was this time in middle school where a teacher forgot to put in my grade for a paper, so I had this big fat fake 0, and you could check your kids' grades at my school online. So when I came home, I was immediate screaming and berating, taking every single thing I enjoyed away and saying I wouldn't be able to see my friends or anything, until through tears I finally got out the physical paper of the grade to show her that I did it. God, having fun became a stressful thing because I'd always be on the clock, worried that if I was a second late getting home, it would be another time where she'd guilt me to tears, saying I didn't love her or appreciate anything she did because I worried her to death, so I must be trying to kill her. Not as if she let that happen much anyway. There was no privacy. She would go through our phones and read all of our texts. She would spy on us from the parking lot when she did rarely let us go somewhere she wasn't. It was this fucked up, the world is evil and only I can protect you mentality, where to love someone was to own them and control them. The only time she wasn't yelling was when she made us sit in the car for an hour while she tanned, and then had the gall to yell at us for being on our phones later, like you didn't just teach us that that's all we had to be entertained with. Nothing was right for either of them. Nothing made him open up more, and nothing I wanted was perfect enough for her. I just learned to shut the fuck up and do what I was told, and I'm still dealing with the consequences of that all these years later. But the most immediate consequence was this terrible, awful relationship for 3 years because of that, where I wasn't allowed to have my own friends, and I had to change my hair and how I dressed, and the only good interests were hers, and she hated me. She just hated me for 3 years, but I devoted myself fully to her, waiting to get married one day because that was still less fucked up than what I'd seen love was at home. So long as she wasn't throwing chairs at me, it felt healthy. And when things finally ended, God, she ruined my life since I'd given it up to be a part of hers. And a snap of her fingers, I had no friends, no place, nothing. I gave it all to her, and so she took it. And it's like you start to think, why did I even ever offer it? It was 3 years of hell just to come out of it crying in the shower at 6 a.m. before class. It didn't even end any different than my parents did. I was so lost, I kept stumbling into this role as an emotional outlet for people with shitty partners, where we'd be lying on their bed watching movies I didn't care about till 2 a.m, forgoing sleep just to stay on a call all night, all for them to kick me out or hang up on me so they could sleep with someone they just told me they didn't even like. I was just one of 3 lovesick puppies sitting at her table, drinking these horrible drinks she made for us, underage kids at the time, where we just said, oh, they were so good, hoping that one time she would ask one of us to stay. I ditched my friends so many times to be with people like that, for nothing at all. It was always giving, always being used, and after all of that, something in me just broke when it came to connection. It felt doomed from everything I saw with my parents. It felt limiting from everything I went through with my partner. Like, each time someone got close to me, I just felt these walls closing in where suddenly I would have to replace my friends, change my style, be on my phone all the time looking for texts so they wouldn't get mad. My entire life felt like it was going to end and just to one day be fighting. And once our lives were totally enmeshed, split apart, and have to start anew at 40. It's really weird to be going through school at the same time as your mom because suddenly she has to get by on one income and no degree-less jobs paid enough. She was stuck raising 2 kids alone when they were already working 2 jobs before that just to get by, and like, God, seemed so stressful, and I didn't want that. As fucked up as it is, I get why she yelled because it was so much. I didn't want to be tied to someone else's anger and mistakes and risks like that. Love, it was all just risk in service of pain. But you can like sit in your room alone so many nights before, no matter how terrifying it is, that desire starts to well up in you. You go without it for a while, but because of that, the feeling fades deeper and deeper back until it's foreign, and you wonder why you've been so isolated, and you get envious of everyone else, and you get back out there and well, you be shitty to some good people. I have some regrets with relationships. None about like, oh, they got away, but more like, it's probably good they got away from me. I would get so intoxicated with the chase, with the honeymoon, where you're still feeling that good tension, where novelty is still breeding excitement, and most of all, where you don't really know each other yet, where you're still discovering. I loved meeting people, but hated knowing people. So I'd start to date someone new, and things would be going good, but after meeting parents and driving hours and having to text every single hour, that twinge started to get to me, like the slightest hint of responsibility to this person, and I would blow up. I would stop responding and days would pass, and then they would get angry at me, and I would get angry at their anger, and I would make excuses, just digging and digging as if there was sound logic waiting at the center of the earth, and then that just proved my point right. We were always going to end up fighting, so I would just end it, normally with the door slammed in my face because I was being ridiculous. It would be one small fight, one time of them just asking for me to care about them back, and then I would tell them they weren't worth loving because of it. All I had to do was send a text saying something like, I'm busy, I'll talk to you later. But after all my mom's spying and my ex's policing, it just reminded me of that, and walls closing in, and I just couldn't. I wasn't strong enough to send a single text. So I ended up hurting people, a lot of people, and that only gave me more and more reason to be alone, because I didn't want to hurt people. Life is hard enough, but each time it's what I did. After each breakup, I ended up crying in my room alone because of how they were crying in their room alone, because I did that to someone. I had that power, and that terrified me just as much. If they could destroy my life, I could destroy theirs. If I was inconsistent, if I changed, if I made a mistake, they would be paying for it too. I didn't want that power. I didn't deserve that power because it's like I already did that with my parents. Just existing made them work so much more, made them stress so much more, and that had to be a part of it, and now I was just doing it again. I closed off hard. I closed off to the point that lying on someone's chest after that, they said, I can't tell if you even like me or not. Or another time later where I was at the table making eyes at them the whole night, but then we got back, and when they started to actually put their hands on me, I just blew up again and left and sent all these angry texts because they cared about me so quickly, and I didn't want that. I wanted to stay cocooned at home, making videos as an excuse to stay inside because there was a schedule to be met, because the world needed hard-hitting content like anime WikiHow articles 3 times a week, and no one else was providing that. Occasionally I would go out and meet strangers, but again, meeting and not knowing. The point was that they were always unknown or out of town, that they could never see me again, that I could have a night of fun and then recede with no consequences, no attachments, free to do nothing at all alone. That's the problem with being able to do whatever you want with personal freedom. When you can exert your will entirely, that means having nothing available to you that takes more than one will to build. Instead of being able to do things that everyone can make, you can only do everything one person can. It's just the freedom to be alone. But there was one person who refused to give up on me. We dated in college, following the usual pattern. Start off good, they get attached, I start to run, to the point where on her birthday when we were out drinking, just the two of us, I literally ran away because I thought it was fun to do so. And then a week before finals, I broke up with her because I just couldn't anymore. But then after them, I came back to sleep with her again, so we were back together for a bit, so I had to break up with her again, and then she moved home because school ended in the pandemic, and then half a year later we reconnected, and she moves out here to be near me again, saying the job market sucks, but it was probably because she really liked me that much, and we spend half a year just sitting on the couch where I'm refusing to do anything exciting with her, refusing to introduce her to my friends, even after she moved here, knowing no one, just alone in that apartment with no one but me, and me refusing to be there. And finally, we broke up one more time. She moved around me, like literally picked her life up and put it here for me, and I couldn't even move out of the house for a single night. I have no idea what she saw in me, or maybe I didn't want to see it for myself. It was there, and I should have known, but that's why I was staying inside. That's why I was being alone, because if people saw me, then they would see me, and that meant a whole new way of living. It meant a whole new host of expectations and hate and struggle, and it went against everything I'd set up in my life. And one night, we were sitting on her bed, and I was speaking selfishly like I always did, rambling about something I had interest in. This time, an idea for a story I had where it was really important to the plot that the main character was a woman she wasn't allowed to be, and she supported the system that oppressed her because at least that was something she knew instead of facing all that unknown. And I was really into this, speaking about some idea with more passion than I'd ever shown her probably. And when I finally slow down, she says something like, "You know how you tend to process things through making up stories," and I just shut down. I don't even remember what happened next. I didn't even remember it happened for the longest time. Like it was something I wanted to know so minimally that I actually blocked it out. It was only later she reminded me of it, and apparently many more moments like that. Every single one of them ignored at the time. That's probably why I blocked her out too, because she was so annoyingly persistent that she'd seen through all the barriers. She kept looking at what was hiding around the corners and put it together and figured out why I was, and was willing to work around it with me. And even though I kept hurting her, she just kept supporting it and saying it would be okay. And God, it was years earlier. I could have been years ahead on where I am now if I just listened and accepted that help. But I was dumb and stupid and terrified, and I wasted so many years of life being a lonely asshole because I was too afraid to make that change, even when someone was telling me, because I was too afraid to risk a terrible what is for an amazing what could be, both with me and her. If I accepted it, I also had to accept how much time I wasted, how fake my life had been up to that point, and sure, denying it made the pain grow, but if I worked enough, I would be just too distracted to ever notice. So that's what I did. I pushed her away and stayed inside, working and writing for years, only to one day realize I'd spent 5 years telling myself what she did in one night. It was right there. Every time she offered to do anything but sit on the couch, and I kept denying and denying and denying until eventually even she got fed up with me. She moved away after one last time where I broke up with her, and she went off to New York for grad school, and I stayed in the cocoon day in and day out, unchallenged, unchanging. And years passed, and in that time I met someone who was able to show me who I was, but only for one night, and I've told that story before. But I still wasn't ready to take the full plunge, to really make it myself, even if now I didn't deny it anymore. But then she came back, so different, so ahead. Someone she grew up with needed a roommate here, and New York City prices were too high, so she was back in town again, and just so unwilling to put up with my bullshit this time. She would be around me, but we actually had to go out. She would be around me, but also around others, intimately involved with some of the fun, interesting people I'd met through her, and it was a shock to see someone who'd been here for a couple weeks know more people than I'd met in ever. She kept taking me along to meet them, showing me how easy it could be. People who'd long since embraced and acted upon themselves, and I got to introduce myself however I wanted, be whoever I wanted, and it was intoxicating. I started spending every moment I could there with them, with her. I was so flawed, so awful, but they all saw something better and helped it grow. They pulled me out of that room and into the world I was terrified of, showing all the fear was just in my head. I never needed to be alone. It was an arm's length away. I never looked. I was happy at bonfires and birthdays and graveyards and backyards. Happy in that anxious way where I was waiting for the next time to see her and everyone. Happy in that way where a cancellation ruins your weekend. Happy in that way that so suddenly takes over your life. Happy in that way that could so completely destroy you. I was sitting there one day where I decided I would stay home and work, knowing she was going to go out with other people, and in the back of my head, that anxiety was growing like it always used to. I cared about these people now, and in an instant it could all end. She could move on from me, once again refusing to commit, and pick someone else, and suddenly I would be removed from the people who were able to guide me, the person who was able to love me, the life which was starting to feel much brighter than ever before. God, I could fuck it up. I could hurt her. I could get hurt by her. But if I gave up now, I would be just as hurt in a different way. I would lose this place that wriggled into my heart. But if I kept going, then all of that was just going to grow, and I felt trapped between these two options, back and forth, walls pressing me into a tiny cube I couldn't escape from. All that safety I'd so carefully made was gone. I panicked, like truly heads in hands, wondering what to do because there was no way out. I got caught up, and now I was just caught. My life was tied into other people's, truly tied, and I could lose so much. I could end up right back in that room, knowing what I was missing and growing more jaded, more bitter because of it. I imagined what would happen when they all left me behind, and I'd end up like the man I was living with, just finding reasons to justify my loneliness, saying other people were dumb and undeserving of me to compensate for what I'd lost. To try and reason I never wanted it to begin with, and then once I believed that, to just never have it again. I really could have been that asshole. I think if I had some excuse, some detachment like the circus, that's who I would have been. I'm lucky I didn't have that. I'm lucky they were real and grounded me. I don't know how I did it. I don't know what the realization was, but I found something to do but running. I thought that there was one way I couldn't get hurt, one way to delay it at least, and that was to keep taking the risk over and over and over. Each time it felt too large, committing even more so that there was even more reason not to lose it. And yes, it made it all the more capable of destroying me. It meant the few friends I brought into the group could see the worst of me if it happened. It meant I might have to move out alone after moving in together. It meant I might be working around someone else's health or mistakes or anything. I could be destroyed, but only important things can destroy you. It means they were real and powerful. It means I could use that fear, that anxiety, my body literally storing up the energy to move, to build something instead, so long as I kept deciding to, so long as people were there willing to do it with me. Each risk was just one more reason to try to not let it end. So my head left my hands. I got myself up and ready. I drove over there with determination. When she opened the door, she went to turn her back. You picture it in your head how it's gonna go like a movie, but we're just too focused on the moment for that. So I went to open the door, planning to kiss her, and she turned around and started walking after her greeting. So I had to grab her and say something first. But I dropped my bag and I kissed her and I said, for the first time, genuinely, in maybe my entire life, I love you. And we're still together to this day. Lives so entangled, I wouldn't even know where to start untying them. And that means it's pretty complicated some days. God, I own too many things and that stresses me out. I have responsibilities I never wanted. I need money for food and rent that I never did before, and sometimes I think I should have stayed alone because that gets to me. But I remember that useless freedom, how I never would have embraced myself to even enjoy anything to begin with if I never took the risk. I could be crushed by all of this at any moment. I could be destroyed by so many factors out of my control. But that's the only way to ever be me to begin with, to ever be loved and love. Jax reminded me of who I would be if I let that fear win, if I wasn't able to accept the help around me. Reminded me that I can't push people away and return to what was, because I wouldn't be the person I am without them. I can't just somehow go back to having that freedom. They helped me be this. There's no world where I became it without them. And so Jax kind of made me a person more fit to appreciate what I have. I mean, this is a really flawed show, but that's something pretty special that it did.